Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to VUX World, the voice user experience and strategy podcast. Today's episode is going to be an epic episode. I'm going to call him the Oracle on the show today. Somebody who has been developing on the Alexa platform since it started. He's got over 30 years worth of software engineering and development experience aside from Alexa, but he's been developing on the Alexa platform since it began. He is the creator of I'm sure it's one of the most popular games, certainly one of the most complex games on the Alexa platform, Six Swords. He is Joe the Oracle Jacquinta. Hello, Joe.
Hello. You're very flattering.
And we also have Dustin Coates co-hosting once again. Hello there, Dustin.
Hey, looking forward to this, Joe. It's going to be a great episode.
So, Joe, you've been working with the Amazon Alexa platform for 3 years now, is it? 3.5 years, something like that?
Well, almost coming up to 3 years. I wasn't there right at the beginning. I was there right after the beginning. There's some people with skills older than mine. I'm not going to take, credit where credit's not due, but yeah. But, since the beginning, I've probably been developing very intensively. I've last count, I had, 100 somewhere north of 100,000 lines of code that I've devoted to the Alexa platform. So that's wow. pretty intensively for the last nearly 3 years.
Wow. What about you, Dustin? You've been on there for quite a while. When did you start developing on this platform?
Yeah, probably a little bit after Joe, right around when the SDK beta came out, or actually even before the SDK, but when they first rolled out that beta. But definitely not 100,000 lines of code like Joe's got.
So 100,000 lines of code. Translate that to hours then, Joe, roughly.
Let's see. 1,500 hours?
1,500 hours. Wow.
Yeah, I do it the other way around because it's like, I would normally work out how much money I've sunk into the platform, which is a factor of how much. Yeah, but about 10 hours. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's really, I have a day job. I have kids. I do this, after the kids go to bed at night. I spend, 10 to 15 hours a week, which is like 2 hours a day,
Yeah.
It's not actually as much as it sounds.
And how much of that time was early on when you were working on it versus recently?
It's been fairly constant. Okay, up until December. Okay, after December, there's a bit of a shift, and we're looking at other things now. But up until then, it was about. The point is, I just do more. It's whether I'm spending the time getting the fundamentals working, or whether I'm spending the time getting actual implementation going, and that does break down into. I have a quite sizable library. I have my own SDK, and that's quite a fair chunk of that, which makes each individual skill easier to do. So kind of breaks down like that.
Cool. So, Joe, there might be people, there will be people listening to this who are, involved in the scene, who are familiar with the Slack channel, familiar with yourself, but also there may be people who are listening to this who might not even been working in a job for longer than you've spent developing on Alexa in terms of man hours. But so for those people who aren't aware of yourself, or who aren't aware of Six Swords, who aren't aware of Sazazu, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and about Sazazu?
Sure. Sazazu is a company. It's run by my wife. We set up a good few years ago, and as a sort of a side enterprise to capture at the time. What we wanted to do is like, okay, what's new? What can we apply? Because I have a lot of skills, but not a lot of time because I have a day job. But I'm very experienced. So we did this and we set it up with mobile. In fact, it was our first target. And we did a lot of early mobile development. And the aim was to, and continues to be, to divide our time between our own projects, developing our own intellectual property, to proof out and test new environments and platforms, and to work out, best principles, best practice, that sort of thing. And then also consultancy for people who themselves want to get started on this, and we can, make available what we have learned about it, and by trying the hard things, by approaching the difficult problems, and trying to come up with the best solutions, we can then advise others for that. So that's what we started off doing. We moved from mobile when that became saturated into voice. Voice looked interesting and said, okay, well, let's go here. And we've been here since nearly the beginning of the voice stuff now. But that's kind of where we were. Myself, I've been a software developer ever since I left college. Right now, my day job is with IBM. Wonderful company. Been there coming close to 25 years. So I'm an old guy. Been there a while, have a lot of experience. And I know, and again, they're great. They let everybody do things on the side as long as they say that I am not here. I'm not speaking on behalf of IBM or any of, don't try to read anything into what I say about what IBM may or may not do in this space. But beyond that, they're happy to let their employees do these little side projects and say anything.
Wicked. And Zazazu, that sounds very much like a kung fu move. Is that where that name come from? What does that name mean?
I don't know, but I believe it comes from Sex in the City, so a different direction there. You'd have to ask my wife.
Fair dues. So you said that you started going into the kind of voice space around about when it first started dawning, and we kind of won't get into the details of all of the skills you created. You were on the VoiceBot.ai podcast in September. What we'll do is we'll link to that podcast. Anybody listening to this, do check that podcast out, because there was a whole load of really valuable insights in there, and it's a really interesting podcast. Let's kind of get to the one of the main skills that you've developed, which is Six Swords. Do you want to tell people who haven't experienced Six Swords what Six Swords is and where it all came about?
Well, Six Swords is basically it's D&D by voice. That's the simplest way. If you've played any role-playing game, if you've heard of Dungeons and Dragons, it's that, but you play it by voice. Okay, and it actually uses a open source version of the first edition Dungeons and Dragons rules for the people who know more about it. But ultimately, in the end, it's like you're managing a team of up to 6 characters, thus Six Swords, who are all mercenary fighters, and there's an infinite landscape, and you run around the place. There's roads, there's cities, there's all sorts of monsters between them. You can go off into the wilderness. There's, essentially, ungodly number of dungeons to explore, forts to temples to cleanse. I've just added in dragon lairs and giant halls, and there's all sorts of locations to explore. You can actually even acquire land deeds and actually build your own castles and extend them and stuff like this. And you had a castle contest in December that was actually very popular, and somebody built a 250-room castle. That was pretty impressive. So it's this big, huge, honking, open-ended game that some people spend tens to hundreds of hours playing. It's been one of the most deeply engaged skills, I believe, out there. Sadly, not one of the most popular skills. I don't get a huge payout. In fact, I don't get any payout for it anymore. I have essentially a small number of very intense users, but where it came about, and because you guys are focused on design, which is or the user experience, which I think is the place and where all the smarts have to go these days, was through our other first game, which didn't do so well. Rather, it did really well for a while and then kind of collapses out. It's called Star Lanes. It was the first massively multiplayer game on Alexa. You are all playing. There's 2 main sides. You have this, Starfield that you can go between, and you're all kind of moving your pieces around the board, each for your side, taking over points and direct player. So you had everybody real time playing each other, moving the stuff around, and it was great. We had lots of engagement, but some of the problems happened because it's just the skill store grew, and it became harder. People no longer stumbled across it by accident. And one of the main problems with voice apps today is user acquisition, getting people to realize you're there. And so there was a taper off that was partially due to that. The other part was pure design. It's like I expanded it too quickly. The new stuff didn't quite fit with the old stuff, and audio models can become overburdened, and so the recognition wasn't quite working right. It was a little hard to manipulate, and that coupled with the being hard to discover kind of And then design problems. I am a programmer. I am not a games designer. I play games occasionally, but one problem I have is one side won. Okay. And I couldn't really like go back and just steal their victory from them, and it made it a lot less interesting for both sides to play. So these three together were kind of like, and I'm like, I see my mistakes, I see what I can do, but I can either spend a lot of effort in fixing this to try to get it back to what it was, or I can take all those lessons and build something new. And in the end, I still would love to get back to Star Lanes and fix all the problems with it someday. If we got anybody who really, really wants to do great voice design and have a whole engine, they want to put a new interface on top of it, I'd be lovely to talk to them. But what I did is I wrote 6 swords. Okay, and that was like, okay, let's take a step back. Where do we want to go? What lessons have we learned? And let's try to build something that works with those lessons.
Cool. And when you were building it, we kind of touched on it before we started doing the intros and that kind of stuff. And you and Dustin were just about to kick off a conversation about when you were building 6 Swords. You were talking about you creating your own SDK, was it? Have I got that right?
Yes, the system development kit. Amazon produces one. They produce it in a couple of different languages. I should note as well, I also developed for the Google Home. So a big desire of mine was to write once and have it run on both platforms. And neither company is going to give you a kit that lets you develop for their competitor. So in some ways, I didn't have a lot of choice. But I also found out through the early one that my language of choice is Java for a number of different reasons. And that's, again, mostly I advise people to program what they know the best. For me, it was Java. That's what I want to use. Their official SDK was very slow on updates there. And a number of other things. It just and there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to do. As I said, it's like the specialty we have in Zazazu is I have a lot of experience, but not a lot of time. So we try to do hard things. So the SDKs are really there as from the companies to help people do stuff, just get the basics going and things like that. And they're beginning to add some more features and stuff to them, but not at the pace that I needed them and not on the cross-platform way. So that's why I ended up investing pretty heavily into essentially my own software development kit.
And when did you start writing this, Joe? How long ago was this?
Not quite from day one. I think I went the first 6 months or so using their stuff. It's really... I did start moving away from it fairly early, but what was the real impetus was when Google came out with their platform. Okay. Now, before that, in fact, if you look at another one of my games, Subwar, which released into the public domain, and you can find all the source code and a very long video on the design aspect. It was the first real-time shooter. So if you actually, and there's no reason you can't do this in Alexa. A lot of people think it's not possible, but it's there. I've done it. It's there. And there's a lot of some interesting stuff in there to do that. But anyways, in that I outline an approach to take to, because I was doing this, I knew it was going to be in the public domain because it was for a contest. I want to see more complex stuff out there. So I said, okay, here's going to be a whole thing on architecture. So it's like, it gives you how to break your program into different layers, where you have the platform layer, which deals with the specifics for your platform, then the audio interface layer, and then beyond that, you have the business logic, or in this case, the game logic layer and stuff like that. So their standard SDK doesn't really, you can kind of use it to do that with, but I wanted something that from the ground up embodied these principles and allowed for easy cross-platform development. Another big thing was I wanted the spoken model and the recognition audio model to be together in the same structures. Okay, that what it says and what it hears you can maintain together, because to get this translated, you want to send that all off together to be translated, and nobody quite had that. So that's another reason I kind of went my own way.
So you've written your own. There are businesses coming up like Jovo, who we had on in an earlier episode, that do the same write once, run anywhere type of voice first tooling. How do you see the future of that tooling? Do you think people are going to stick with one or the other? Or do you think they're going to try and hit as many platforms as possible using the same tooling?
I certainly think it's advisable to spread your intellectual property as wide as you can. It's hard to answer that question right now because nobody's making any money anywhere. So, really, the answer is follow the money. If on multiple platforms, it gives you, the better chance to make more money, then you should do that. Being focused on one. But right now the platforms are there's sufficient overlap between them that you're not really losing a lot by doing it everywhere, other than if you already have the investment of having something that runs on all of them.
And you mentioned that in December you changed tactics.
Yes.
And what are you doing now?
Well, 3D printing. but the reasons why, I mean, it's like, I guess as I said, nobody's making any money on this. December was kind of our limit, okay, in the sense that we have this great property, Six Swords. Like I said, we have some really deep engagement. I mean, these people are there's some people that have spent longer playing it than I have spent writing it, okay? I was like, somebody pointed that out on Slack, and I'm like, oh my God, that's right. It's just been really popular in this small field. And what I really need is more. I've got maybe 50 people who've spent 20 minutes or longer playing the game. Okay, I got some people spend hundreds of hours. I mean, but 50. That's our kind of monetization breakthrough. If somebody spent 20 minutes playing this, spread over a day, a week, a month, or whatever, then they probably would be willing to pay a little bit of money for it. Okay, so anybody who spends 20 minutes, we reckon we can probably make $10 on over the course of a year. That's kind of our monetization targets. Now, the point is, it's not worth building in the monetization until you have enough people that it's worth something. And I have 50 people, it's not worth it. If I had 500 people, it would be worth it. So the whole focus became, how do I get 500 people? So for the last 4 months of 2017, that was our focus. So, okay, how do we build user acquisition? And we tried all sorts of advertising. We tried this, we tried that. We tried putting in cool features and this sort of thing. And our goal was to have the best shot we could make on December 26th. That's like St. Stephen's spike. If you look at your usage charts, that's where it goes off the top. It's the most number of users, on Alexa and Google in the year. So we hit that. We got a spike of users, but we didn't retain them. Okay, they came, they played it, and most of them went away again. Okay, and we couldn't keep it up there. Okay, and that was our target. We put a lot of effort and stuff into this, but at some point you have to decide that it's time to move on. So from there we said, okay, well, let's and from there we sort of said, okay, what's our next thing going to be? Let's put this in maintenance mode. I mean, we're not running away and dropping our toys, et cetera, and running off in a huff. It's like, okay, that didn't work out. Let's keep it in a position where if some key changes are made that enable us to solve those problems, we can pivot back and do something with it. In the meantime, I acquired this dedicated base that I really hate. I mean, I feel really responsible to these people that spent this big chunk of their life playing my little. And over the course of the nearly a year it's been out, we've had 35,000 people have tried it. Okay, and hardcore players, which is kind of a very small percentage, but whatever. It's about, I kind of feel a little beholden to them. So I am keeping it in maintenance mode, and I'm putting what time I can into it. Right now, our 3D printer is broken, and the next one's on order, so I have some quality time I can put into it.
What do you think is? So you said that you've done a lot to try and get users. So some of the content that you've been putting out on YouTube and stuff like that, you kind of touched on the two main points that you make in a lot of the content that you've put out there, which is two of the real challenges in terms of acquisition and then retention. So seemingly you tried something to try and get users, and you mentioned advertising, things like that. What were some of the other things that you tried to get users via? And do you know whether or not, can you tie any kind of growth in usership to any specific advertising that you did, or was it a general bit of advertising and then a general increase in users?
Well, we've done a general bit of advertising, we've done specific advertising, we've done targeted advertising, we've done AdWords, we've done everything, and they all tie to nothing detectable above noise. The only thing that has ever produced any influx that is at all measurable, even just measurable, has been being on Amazon sliders in their companion app and being in an Amazon newsletter. Okay, these are the only things that we have found that move the needle at all on the number of users coming to the system.
And then what about? So you'd mentioned that you kind of had a spike around Christmas time. Obviously, Alexa, the Echo devices had just kind of went through the roof, didn't they, over Christmas time?
Yes.
So people have found it, and then what do you put the problems with retention? You mentioned that you had a big spike, and then not many people come back. What do you put that down to? Do you think?
Well, there are structural problems with this as a platform. Okay, on a desktop app or web app, I mean, you've got bookmarks. You can say, "Hey, bookmark us," and stuff like that, and they can go and see. There's a history. There's a most recently used list. There are icons that go onto your desktop. Okay, there's a bunch of different little ways you can remind the user that you exist and maybe you'd like to come back to you. Okay, but something and none of those exist for voice. Okay, even something as simple as like sending them an email. Emails are really hard to acquire via voice. Okay, you have to do the only really practical way of doing it is through an account sign up, and that creates a barrier. People go and I don't want to sign into this, and so that it lowers your acquisition rate. We started off actually with account linking in Six Swords, but we took it away after a couple of months because we needed more users, and we didn't really want to spam all our users anyways, so we can do that there. But so the things that Google are coming out with some interesting features that they understand it's a problem. Okay, and they have acknowledged it's a problem, and they have been trying a couple of different things. Okay, they haven't been terribly successful at them yet, but the jury's still out on some of them. But at least they're looking for a solution. Amazon never tells us what they're doing, so we don't know if they think it's a problem. We don't know if they're trying to find a solution. We just have to wait until they, unleash it.
Joe, and what's your wish list? If Google came to you and said, "We're going to hire you, we want you to solve this problem," what would be your top things that you would tackle right away?
Well, actually, a funny side story is that I found out about Alexa in a job interview with Amazon, which I subsequently turned down. So they tried that. That was, nearly 3 years ago, whatever. But the recruiters come to me now and again. But anyhow, that's a different conversation. The one thing, Amazon could change this overnight. Okay, if they let people buy space in their sliders. So, you open up their app, there's, here's the featured ones, here's the recommended one, here's the best ones for cat facts, here's the best ones for this, all these different, I forget what they call it. I call them sliders. They might be called them carousels or something like that. But if say the number 2 one, fair enough, they want the number 1 slot, it's their business, that makes sense. But if the number 2 slot, not the number 8 slot, but the number 2 slot was sponsored skills. Okay. Just like you search for something in Google, you get, here's the people who are paying us to put our links here, very clearly marked as that. And then there's, the real results. Okay. In the same sense, if they just had one of those for sponsored skills, that we could buy our way onto that. Okay. Or in their newsletter, if they said, okay, we're going to stick something in here for, the sponsored skill for this newsletter, and, even make people bid on it or something, because you can only have one in that. It doesn't make sense to have more there. Then if they just did that, then we have some control over acquisition. If we want to throw money at it, okay, we can do it. Maybe I have a crappy skill, okay? Maybe I think it's awesome. I think it's totally awesome, but maybe it's not doing well because it's crappy. I don't know. But no one else is able to control their acquisition, so, we don't know. Either it's a crappy skill or we just can't acquire people. But if I could, put my, courage behind my conviction and, lay down, take my money and run advertising things and get it out in front of people, okay, I would have a chance. Then I could make a business out of it, okay? Right now, I can't because I can't do anything about acquisition, okay? I've tried a whole bunch of these different things. It's not a question of you pay this much, you get this many users. That's how most platforms work, okay? That doesn't even exist in this one. So if I was in charge of Amazon, in this problem, that is what I would do there. Google are doing some interesting things. They acknowledge this as a problem, okay? They don't necessarily have any great solutions for it, but their app is not quite as pivotal as Amazon's one is for acquisition on the Google platform. I've yet really to work out exactly what's driving it at Google. I know there's this, what I call the plateaus, where 6 months last year, I had a 400% higher acquisition rate, and I have no idea why. Okay, and then it went away. It's like they were doing something then, and then it stopped doing it. And a lot of other people have seen this too, so we don't know what that is. There's something there. Google is going in an interesting direction where they are more tightly integrating their voice apps with the mobile platform. Okay, so I think that is a direction that I would want to know more about where they're going there if I worked for them. But that is kind of way. One of the big problems we have with voice is that it is a transition. It is a separate device. Okay, you can get an email and click on a link, your browser comes up, and you're in the property, or you get a download thing or something like that. You're not moving off your PC. You're sitting on your PC. You're in your mobile app. You see an advertisement for a mobile game or something. You click it. It downloads it onto your mobile platform. You're staying in the platform. Here, you can't advertise on the device. They don't have that. You can only advertise on other mediums, and then you need to do that little transfer to the other one. And you always lose people when you do that, which means everything's much more expensive. And in this case, I haven't been able to prove it's effective at all. So with this tight integration between Google and their mobile platform, I think they're moving to a position where they might be able to transition mobile advertising into being able to successfully advertise voice apps. And that's perhaps what I would look at if I was working at Google.
It sounds like something that would be more up Google's street, that, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Paid advertising to, because they do it everywhere else, don't they, on mobile and stuff like that?
Well, they are an ad company. I mean, people often try to compare Google and Amazon with voice, but I think they're both coming at it from very different directions. I think Amazon wants to sell things in the marketplace. That is primarily what their company is about. Google sell advertising. That is primarily what their company is about. So no matter what they may say or what their ambitions are, they kind of their projects get drawn in those directions. Okay, they're always going to be evaluated the higher up you go by the chain about how much they do one of those things. So yes, I do think Google is closer to it. Now, Amazon could do a similar play and try to tie it into the marketplace deeper and sort of say, okay, well, really, we want skills that help facilitate buying stuff in the marketplace. You see a lot of things like where people do newsletters or podcasts or something. I said, oh, and by the way, here's a special coupon code for such and such. And, you buy advertising certain products with a certain code, your customers get a discount, they get to sell their product, and you get a kickback. Okay. That would be much more of an Amazon type solution to the problem. It would be interesting to see them just say, okay, fine. We're trying to sell stuff in the marketplace and embrace it.
Do you think it's because that's their main objective in terms of trying to use the platform as a way to sell stuff? Or do you think it's because culturally, as a company, they don't have either the same kind of leadership or vision or culture that Google would just naturally take on? Does that make sense?
No, it's there are corporate cultures and they're hard to buck. I mean, a lot of my, I've been very vocal on Slack with some of my criticism of Amazon, and some of it is that IBM culture, which is what I am immersed in, is very different from the Amazon culture. And I've come to realize that I have these false expectations about, which again come from my cultural viewpoint, and has caused this sort of thing. So I think the companies do have their different cultures that does influence things. They have their different base business models, which can be hard to get around. Okay, now AWS has managed to get around that because that's not really behaving like marketplace. It doesn't exist solely to boost stuff in marketplace. Okay, and it's been very successful. Okay, so it can be done. The Alexa stuff came out of their mobile division. Okay, the Fire tablets, the mobile gaming stuff that they, God bless them, keep trying to promote. But even as a mobile developer, I looked at it and I tried to do something on there, and I'm like, I just can't deal with this. They have not been very successful there. So that's kind of where this came out of. And it's like, it's either got to conform and embrace what their company is good at, or it's really got to live for itself and be its own thing. That's what AWS did and ended up being extremely successful. Voice needs to either break away from that, develop its own backbone, or, probably develop its own, very passionate executive in the company to shield them from the pressures to go that way and make it its own thing, or it's just going to say, okay, let's really go with the company strength. That's my opinion.
And then So you kind of said that you put Six Swords in maintenance mode in kind of around about December time. Have you kind of got any other aspirations to kind of get back involved in the voice space, whether it's devices aside, so Echo and Google Home and stuff aside, the whole kind of using voice to interact with either the internet or technology or anything like that? Is Zazazu exploring any other avenues, or is it still kind of interest to you, or are you waiting for either Amazon or what have you to change kind of tactic?
Well, the thing is, most of these other opportunities require something we're not good at. For example, hardware. Okay, enabling a refrigerator to be able to talk to your refrigerator or something like that. We're not good at hardware. I am a software engineer. Hardware unsettles me. Yeah, I'm not a gadget guy. So Internet of Technology, it's like, we've got 3 voice-activated switches in our house. 2 of them are sitting in a box next to me. I haven't got around to putting them on something. We're those aren't our strengths. Our strengths are kind of native software type stuff. So if you're looking at a pure software solution, this is kind of where it is with these voice apps and these platforms. It's a little hard to go outside of that because we've had people come to us on the consulting side and really want to do these things. And I'm like, really the answer is you want your own platform, okay? Because you just want to do one thing, and this is an open platform for doing lots of different things on. Where you want to put this in secure environment, you really just wanted to do one thing. We had hoped that there would be a big play to make around the business side of things. I was very excited when Amazon came out with their was it Alexa for Business? Okay, because that could have had a huge amount of potential, but we're not really convinced that they're taking it in the right. It seems like they're really just going back to this is a way to sell audiovisual hardware, okay, as opposed to the other side, which is let's work with businesses who are mostly going to write internal stuff to enable their own stuff to really make an internal voice platform out of this. I mean, from the very simple example is that they want you to put an always listening device into your conference rooms where you have client confidential conversations taking place, but they don't have a privacy clause in their agreement that says they will destroy all records and never ever listen to what was said. That's just you're dead on the starting block for so many companies with that.
That does sound like a challenge. That, especially some of the place where I'm at the moment, that would be an absolute no-go. And that's the thing, that things are starting to get more and more, and people and companies in general are starting to get more and more sort of attuned to the whole privacy thing, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? And I think that not to have that kind of agreement in place, that would I think that would kind of put off quite a few people. That.
Yeah, this is why what makes me think that they're mostly talking to the hardware vendors as opposed to the business consumers. But, I think, I did a short stint as an ethical hacker. So, and that really twisted my brain so that, I'm always looking at things from a security standpoint. It's like, oh, yeah, how can we hack that?
And Joe, what do you think about the future for voice on mobile? Voice first has been the sexy thing in the news, but do you think there's a future for voice interaction on mobile as well?
I think, I think that's a good idea. I mean, what we see is Amazon has started bringing out devices with screens, okay, which in general I think is a bad idea, in the sense that, once you add a screen to something, it stops being this, eyes-free app, and it starts being something that you can look at and talk to. And if you really start, either you have to ignore the screen and develop something that is the right design experience for voice only, or you start incorporating screen elements. And because we're just so overwhelmingly experienced at doing screen stuff, it takes a really, really iron-willed developer to not make the screen predominant in the design. And if the screen's predominant in your design, you have to stop and ask yourself, why am I writing a screen-enabled voice app instead of writing a voice-enabled mobile app? And we have a lot more experience at doing mobile apps, and so I think that may be if this whole voice assistant thing turns out to be a fad and kind of disappears. I think the legacy it will leave is that our other apps, mostly on mobile, will be a lot more voice aware. They might start having voice modes where it's like, okay, yeah, this is the recipe I want. Now, you put your phone down, but you leave it in voice mode, sort of thing.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. That's the way that it seems as though a few things are already going down that route. I know I've seen a thing on Twitter where Spotify had been trialing a little kind of voice-enabled search feature or something like that, I think. And there's a few other apps that I've noticed. I think Domino's has one where if you open the Domino's app, there's a little microphone there. You can tap that and then it's voice-enabled. So it's kind of, I think that what you just mentioned there seems to be potentially already happening, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's a hard thing to, I mean, it's hard for a voice-only thing to compete with something. And once that becomes more mainstream, then you take away a lot of the value proposition of having this dedicated hardware speaker that's wired to the wall.
Cool. So that's the kind of structural ecosystem surrounding it, and it sounds as though there's a few challenges there to monetize these kind of voice applications or audio applications, I think is what you've kind of termed it in some of the things I've seen from yourself. In some of the things, do you think that some of these monetization things are down to the vendors, as in Amazon and Google, or is there any kind of scope for monetization? I know that you've mentioned in a few of your YouTube videos there's kind of an easy way to monetize and a hard way to monetize in this kind of industry. I don't know if you want to kind of share your thoughts on those two things.
Well, the easy way to monetize is to sell services. Okay, we do the consultancy. We've, probably made more money on the consultancy side, or we could make a lot more money. Unfortunately, we're honest consultants, and most of our consultancy goes to that's not a good idea for voice apps. but there's a lot to be done there. But the problem with that, is that if you're trying and people selling developer services like that, you can make money hiring out to somebody writing voice apps for them. But if they can't make money on their voice apps, they'll eventually work that out and you won't have the business anymore, which is why we mostly focus on that's the hard way, is how do you actually make money on voice apps? Because if you can't do that, the other way is let's pick the money from the money tree now while it's in bloom, because it's going to go away. So, and again, I think I laid out kind of 3 steps, sort of kind of facetiously. In a sense, step 1, build something of value. Okay, you have to do something that's value, and part of that is step 2, which is find people who value it. Okay, and step 3 is to ask them to make money off them. Okay, ask for them for money. Right now, it's that middle bit is the hard bit. Building something of value, that's up to programming ingenuity. Okay, a lot of people, a lot of clever ideas out there. There's plenty of that. Step 3, get their money from them. Okay, is what everybody's hung up on. Okay, and it's like, oh, we need a monetization API. We can't do this, and I'm like, crude word. I don't know what PG audience your rating is, but and already have a crude word monetization API. Okay, and no one's using it. Okay. B, I've got 6 different ways that I can monetize. And Starlanes had in-app currencies. Okay, we sold T-shirts. We did merchandising for Starlanes. Actually, we have T-shirts for 6 Swords too, just nobody buys them. There's subscriptions. Amazon's coming out with the subscription things, but that doesn't stop you doing it now. Okay, there's no reason. That makes it a little easier, but you can still do that. Okay, there's any number of other ways, I have a list of them somewhere, that you can monetize right now. So number 3 is already taken care of. Okay, it's that middle bit, it's the user acquisition bit. And that is the one bit that I feel we are constrained by the platform, and that we need a platform solution there. Okay, either that or somebody much smarter than me. Okay, I like to say, I've tried harder than anybody else to make money on this. Okay, through native apps. Okay, and I have not been successful. I've tried everything I can think of, and I haven't heard something from other people that I haven't thought of that applies to my little domain. There are people making money on this through different ways, but for the native apps, it's like that. Somebody either has to think of something new, or the platform have to finally decide they want something here.
Have you heard from any other skilled developers who've had, even half as much success as 6 Swords in terms of either user numbers or retention, and whether there's any kind of patterns or similarities? It seems as though, from correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though from what you've discussed, it sounds as though it's a lot of the power rests in the hands of, in the Echo example, Amazon, for example, and it's whether or not they choose to promote you in their newsletter on the front page of their app. Is that the pattern for all popular apps, do you think? Or I don't know if you've spoken to any other people who've developed apps, and Dustin, maybe you might have any insights from your perspective. Is that the real way that things get adoption, is purely by Amazon promoting it for you?
I'm sure I am aware of a popular app that isn't something that Amazon has promoted. So most of the people who don't think there's a problem with user acquisition are perfectly happy with the money they're making are the ones that Amazon are heavily promoting, coincidentally enough. There are people who are making a lot of money on dev payouts, but again, they have no control over it. In fact, I think, dev payouts are bad for the environment. Google made an interesting point. They had a conference call on development there, and somebody said, hey, are you going to start paying us money like Amazon do? And they're saying, no, we don't want to do that. We want to give you the features that you can make money yourself. Okay. And I think they're right in the sense that is healthier, because then you have a self-sustaining thing. Whereas Amazon stuff, as long as they're willing to cut checks out of their marketing department, they'll continue to get those payouts there. And I would never base a business model on them. But again, also because really it's hard to acquire those. So I think that, yes, but that's also it's hard to answer honestly, because other than what Amazon promote, I'm not aware of other skills. Okay, I'm not sure how I would know that something was popular other than seeing it in the app or kind of hearing people talk about it and things like that. I don't think I've heard from any source about this is a really cool app, et cetera, that isn't something that I saw in one of the Amazon promotional things.
What about you, Dustin? Have you had any different experiences in that respect?
No, my experience is about the same as Joe's. I think if I knew how to promote my skills to get a ton of users, I'd be a much happier guy.
Fair dues. So one of the things that, and I know that this is something that is often said in response to that, is that it's early days and the platforms are immature, etc. Your view is different to that, Joe, isn't it? Do you want to tell us a little bit about how it's not quite early days and why your view of that would be different?
Yes, I am contrarian there. Well, actually, because I've been doing it for a long time. But so define early days. Okay, my definition of early days is not a time one. It's are there frequent releases of disruptive features? Okay, if you look at mobile development, Android 1.2, Android 1.4, the world changed. Okay, it wasn't until we got to like 2.3, 2.2, and I forget what confection they were named after, that it really became kind of stable. Okay, in the sense that they weren't bringing out things that are like, oh my God, I have to there's a whole new app I can write now, or oh my God, that completely invalidates what I've already done. Okay, that's how all platforms start. Okay, there's this, and then suddenly this new capability comes along, which so changes the field that everything you've done makes no sense anymore. Okay, and that is how and it's like they also do this like hockey stick graph. Okay, where the things tail off over time, and that's how when it's mature and now people are ready to engage this seriously, because you can make longer term business plans. I mean, and we're very attuned to that because we like being in that curvy section there, because the whole point is we want to get in there, and we're going to burn some time making things that then get invalidated by later features, but we're developing the experience and we have a better understanding about why that feature was developed, because we've gone through the pain of not having it. And then once people are ready to engage in the steady state, we can give them our advice. When I look at voice, our best, so the most rewarded app that we have, the only one that still gets developer payouts, is 21 Blackjack, for which we haven't changed a line of code in, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. Okay. There's nothing new in it. It doesn't take advantage of any of the new features they brought out. There's nothing in there that's made it, there's nothing they've done which we could have used to make it more successful. Okay, so, and if we look at the pace of features coming out, they're all what I call incremental features. There's no disruptive features. Okay, even Google, the last release from Google had a couple of things that I'm like, okay, yeah, that could change things, and I haven't fully thought them through yet to decide whether that really, because they're all drawing it towards mobile. It's those sort of things, which may be the direction this all has to go in. I haven't decided yet. Okay, but those are the only ones that have given me pause. Everything else that has come out, it's like entity resolution. I mean, who cares? Okay, you can solve that in code. Okay, the thing is, like I said, I have very advanced libraries, and half the time Amazon come out with a feature that I've been doing for 6 months because I came up with the idea. I can do it based on what they've already done, and I put it in my system, and I'm already using it. They bring out it officially. I'm like, that's nice, but it doesn't help me. It's not a foundational difference. So this is my contrarian view on the early days: is that we're not there because it's been pretty steady state for the most part. Some new things, et cetera, but nothing that really is overwhelming. Yet no one has come up, even though we've had this stability, no one has really come up with a strategy for being successful here, other than brand promotion.
And do you think that? Because I'm just trying to think of skills that either I've used or that I'm aware of that have been successful. Quite a lot of them are relatively straightforward. So the knock jokes, the Jeopardy quiz, and most of the templates that are available kind of follow those kind of lines, don't they? Do you know what I mean? It's a game, it's a question and answer, it's a kind of request and response. From what I've seen, and maybe I just haven't delved too deep into the world of skills that are out there, but from what I've seen, the Six Swords is probably the most, it's kind of, there's no boundaries, is there? It's just a really immersive, engaging, complex kind of environment, and I'm not sure that I've seen that elsewhere. So is it because of those reasons that you've just mentioned, in terms of it's the features that are there and features that are going to enhance things immeasurably, or is it because actually the skills that are being produced are either fairly simple and rudimentary and not quite as in-depth and as complex or as engaging? Is it a platform problem, or is it a design problem, do you think?
Well, you're asking a number of right questions and you're asking a number of wrong questions. Okay, there's a couple of things in play there. Okay, so let me tease it out my way. Okay, one is Six Swords is vastly more complicated than almost anything else. Six Swords was very hard to write. Okay, I'm a very experienced developer. We charge a lot of money per hour for me to do development work. But the thing is because there's no money in skills, nobody's engaging it professionally. Okay, so I've dumped, in time-wise, $150,000, $200,000 of time into Six Swords. Okay, you would be insane to do that with real money. This is my time. I'm burning my time. Okay, it's still valuable, and again, I would never trade it for another hour with my kids. I mean, like I said, do it after they go to bed. Important things are important things. But most people are doing it for self-entertainment or interest or stuff like that. Consequently, they kind of draw the line at a certain level, and they're not willing to go into that level of complexity. Okay, so some of it's is that nobody's investing in complex stuff because it's expensive and there's no obvious return. We took a gamble, we took a risk. Looks like we're probably going to lose everything, but that's part and parcel to it. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is that's not worth it. It's that maybe really for voice it's sufficiently limited that these little quick exchanges and sort of, hey, what's the value of Bitcoin? And 80 skills answer you. Like, oh, now I have it. Now I move on with my stuff. Okay, maybe that's what people want out. Maybe people don't want to sit and talk to their machine for hundreds of hours. I mean, I have people to do that. Maybe they're nuts. Okay, to some degree, actually, and to be fair and to be honest and full disclosure, I've discovered over time talking to some of these people that a lot of them are visually impaired. Okay, and I mean, again, because everything's anonymized, I don't know a lot of my users, okay, but the ones I've connected with on forums, okay, and the ones who've written to me, a lot of them tend to be visually impaired, and they really like it because it is a substantive game, okay, that they can play. I had a letter from a mom, okay, she first wrote to me saying, hey, you got a mature rating, why is it mature? And I'm like, I don't know why it's mature. I got Amazon to change it, but I said other than chopping monsters to bits indiscriminately, I can understand as a parent you may not approve of that, but other than that, no, there's no hidden brothels or anything like that. She said, "Oh, I'm fine with chopping monsters to bits. That's all right." But then she came back and said, my son is blind, okay, and he is just delighted that his older brothers are not blind and they love playing computer games. Okay, and he is just delighted that he has something to do, now has a computer game he can play like his brothers. Okay, and that's one of the reasons I stick with it. It's like, okay, we're non-commercial mode and hobbyist mode, but it just brings tears to my eyes. But on a larger sense, and in the design sense, that maybe these long, complex things I've been doing are completely ill-suited for the market. That really nobody has the patience to sit there for tens to hundreds of hours engaged in a deeply immersive audio game, unless that's all they can do. So that could also be an answer. Okay.
So that's one of the use cases is for people with accessibility needs for the voice first devices. And I think you mentioned that Starlanes was a game where you thought you would try and take advantage of the whole multiplayer side of things. And I know I read a stat, it might have actually been on VoiceBot, that was saying that 50% of Alexa or Echo usage is done with more than one person there. And I'm just thinking, even just myself, there's so many screens kicking around that nobody really wants another screen, because we've got far too many screens anyway. We spend all day looking at a screen. So that kind of downtime, I've heard lots of stories of people having rooms where you can't, in the house where you can't take your phone in. It's just a quiet snug where you can have a break away from technology and spending more time with family and stuff like that. So with people spending that kind of trend bubbling on, and then with a lot of Alexa usage being kind of happening with more than one person present, I'm wondering whether that's kind of an area that might be an opportunity in terms of something that's a little bit more in-depth than a question answer, like Jeopardy or something like that. I'm wondering if that's a use case or something that is, I know it's not early days necessarily in terms of the platform capabilities, but is it early days in terms of user behavior and adoption and usage of these devices? And can you see that scenario I've just mentioned kind of playing out in the future?
It's an interesting thought. Okay. I'm not sure I was saying there's more than one person in the room, because the thing is, it performs the worst when there's more than one person in the room. Because I'll be there, I'll be testing one of my skills, and my kid will come up and ask a question, and my knee-jerk reaction is like, "Don't interrupt me, I'm using Alexa." Stop playing with the thing and talk to your kid. But in the sense, it's like right now, it's like I know we're all exerting effort here not to talk over each other. Okay? Because in a normal face-to-face dialogue, okay, we're all, oh yeah, that's right, and did it, and we're all overlapping each other and stuff, etc., like that. If you put a voice system into an environment where you do have multiple people and you do want them to interrelate with the devices being a co-partner there, right now it's all call and response, so it doesn't work there. And that would be a disruptive feature if that you could get continual things, so that as people said stuff, it got beamed off to your skill instead of in these nice little packets. That would be a disruptive feature. If as people talked, it could send off the information as it happened in real time, and then you could send back responses in a streamed way, as opposed to this atomic call and response thing that we have now. That would be a huge thing. If you could further tag the different things with who said them, and if it was smart enough so that when two people are talking at once, it could filter both of those out, because that's actually a small technical problem compared to even understanding what they're saying. That would be really interesting. Okay, and that's something where we could possibly start to go in that direction. I think with what we have now, where you have to do call and response, that it's going to be hard to leverage that sort of setting.
And speaking of that, you mentioned early days for user behavior. Joe, I know you've got a strong disagreement with the advice to design your skills for natural language conversation. Can you jump into that a little bit?
Yes. Okay. And you're right. I do. The typical response that you get both from Google and Amazon, and designers who are good designers but have not done a lot of work with this sort of call and response voice design stuff. Okay. And again, I'm a developer. I'm not a designer. I worship designers. I love UX people. I think they're great. And I try to learn everything I freaking can from them, because they do magic. And I'm just faking it here. But I see people with a lot of UX experience come into this and say, oh, you want to make the best human experience. So you want to talk like a human. You want to be understood like a human. You want the person to just talk with you. And from a pure design perspective, they're right. I mean, when I got my UX designers, when I was actually castigating one of them on my team because he was coming out with something, he said, well, yeah, we could do it that way, but that would be really hard to implement. I'm like, no, that's not your job. Come up with the best interface possible, okay? And then if it's going to be too hard to implement, then we'll talk about watering it down. But no, that your design as a designer is to do that. And that's what designers are doing. They say, make it, talk like a human, okay? The problem is in this field, that is very hard to do. Okay, and that's another place where we just don't have the technology. I can't think of a library that can take rambling human speech, okay, and all the varieties and education levels you get when you expose something to the mass market, and be able to come up with actionable things that a computer can act on. Just having the text alone isn't enough. Okay, you need to be able to semantically extract from them when they're referring to something they said 3 sentences ago, or stuff like that, to work out what they really meant in concrete terms. Now, we do this as humans all the time, but we got brains that are really attuned to that. And if I don't understand what you're saying, I have to ask you to say it again. Okay, and you understand that and you say it a bit differently. When Alexa doesn't understand and you say it again, it hears exactly the same thing. It doesn't learn, it doesn't develop, and there's we need some really, really crunchy really expertise people in natural language processing to even begin to think about doing that. Where we are now is gisting. Okay, when you say something, a computer can get the gist of what you want to say. So the skills that work the most successfully are the ones that are basically stuff like information lookup. Okay, it's just looking for keywords. Okay, it's not really trying to understand what you're saying, but just kind of what you're getting at. Okay, and from that, it can say, okay, let's piece a few of these together and let's go and do that query. And if you just talk to Alexa outside of a skill mode, that's kind of what it's doing there. It's like, that's kind of what it's doing there. It's taken okay, I understood these bits. Let me give you an answer related to those bits. And I'm sure you've been pretty frustrated sometimes trying to answer a very specific question, and it keeps going off on this other tangent because it doesn't know how to. So this is why what a general design advice I give is absolutely 100% totally break your back, making your skill talk like a human. Okay, you have complete control over that. Okay, I burn a lot of time on 6 swords because you get into a combat, it's like you're 6 guys against 40 goblins. Okay, a lot happens. There's a lot of sword swinging. There's a lot of things dying, things taking damage. And you've got to tell the person this without boring them to death. Okay, at one point it's like, okay, I got to take these 60 results and condense it down to something. Okay, that's cogent and sounds like a socially awkward 14-year-old saying it, and that's my design goal. Okay, if we can achieve that, that's great. And it takes a lot of work, because English is terrible. It's making it, because I would do it and I just sat there and I'm like, okay, sat and did a fight, listened to the answer, and say, okay, how would I say this? I would not say this, I would say this, and then go back and add code until it said it the way I wanted to say it. Then I do something else, listen to it again, and say, okay, does that sound like it's a person talking? No, it sounds like it's a computer talking. How can I change it? And it's a lot of work to merge together run-on sentences, to do run-on sentences, because that's how people talk. But I say, when you're writing how you hear from the person, the design goal is to slowly, subtly, and hopefully unnoticeably teach the computer teach the human to talk like a computer. Okay, in the sense that you're back to single commands, just sort of simple things like and again, that makes sense for long run skills like you spend an hour talking to playing D&D on the thing. You're not going to say, what is in my inventory? It's like, what am I carrying? How I got this. It's like after you've done that a couple hundred times, it gets old. And so, again, various levels of prompting and stuff like that, and some techniques that I encourage, you slowly train them to be able to say that, you can just say inventory. And so the people who've been playing it forever sit there and they go like north, 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 enter, east, fight, 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 run away. It's down to like in fact, some of them, they'll sit there and halfway through Alexa's response, they're like, they interrupt it and you're like, Alexa, fight. I know where this is going. I've heard this prompt a bunch of times. They go for complete terseness because they already know what's going on. And what I likened it to oftentimes is teleprompt things. Okay, I am sure when voice prompt systems first came out, okay, and I'm not sure I was using a telephone when they first came out. I think that was even before my time. People rung them and they're like, oh, press 2 for blah blah blah. And people say 2, please, and they'd be polite to them and they'd be nice because they were interacting with it like a human. Okay, which is exactly what people say they do with Alexa now. Okay, that she's a person, she's this nice little lady who lives in a box, a cylinder, and they talk to it as a person. But I think that's a point in time thing. I think that, especially I watch my kids and they're not polite. They're like, do this, play this. And, it's I said, play. it's and if we look at ourselves using these, one, it's just, we're not there to talk to somebody. We're there to do something. Okay, we want to go. We want to get, what are the opening times for this store? What's what's my current balance on my bank account? And we want to do the minimum thing to get through this menu as possible to get to the value part. Okay, so in the same sense, people have fun talking to Alexa. Okay, and this is again trying to work out whether we're in fad or it's going to keep going. Okay, that comes down to, is it delivering value? Right now, there's plenty of entertainment value in trying to talk to it and, make it understand and listen to it, et cetera, et cetera. But as we get over that, okay, and these become ubiquitous, people need value. They have to be able to efficiently interact with this to get what they want out of it, okay? And I am not convinced that verbose, conversational, human-like interfaces are going to get us there. I may be wrong. Time will tell, but that's certainly the state of the technology, and where I think we have to go to interaction-wise leads me to say and to give the advice that to get them start with verbose, but try to train them into understanding that they can just bark commands at it.
And Joe, you mentioned a while back information retrieval. This is something that's interesting to me. I work day in and day out building search experiences, working with search engines. And I think with voice, once you get past 10, 15 different things that you can look for and you're looking for a huge corpus of information, voice gets pretty tricky. And you've released something recently, a fuzzy lookup. Can you talk about how that works?
Yes, it's you're right. Okay, once you get, one of our contracts, and I think it's published out there. You can look it up. I can't remember the name, but it was with ophthalmologists, and they wanted to have an interesting sort of concierge, part quick lookup thing, and they want to say, okay, and that was, again, you can do that. It's keyword based, but presbyopia, myopia, glaucoma. These don't recognize that well. Alexa's not so good at the 25-cent words. It's you get specialized vocabulary, and having a tight audio model is supposed to help correct for that. Okay, and the success is a little limited around that, but there is some sort of stuff there. Unfortunately, they don't offer any sort of training program where you can say, hey, can I give you some money and make it really good at these words when you're in my skill? They don't have that. Which would make certain commercial opportunities more available. Now, so what you're left with, especially when you start getting to a broad range, that's where you're talking about technical language. When you get to a broad range, it's like there's 400-something monsters in 6 swords, okay? And I want to have a feature that says, what is blah, okay? Bronze dragon, something like that. And, when you get into, goblin, when you get to like hobgoblin or a bugbear or, some of the weirder D&D monsters, it doesn't really understand. So you have that other problem of breadth, okay? A lot of people have the problem that they have a constantly changing vocabulary, or the vocabulary changes on a per-user basis, okay? There's also the fact that Amazon will let you come up with a canned slot. They call it a custom slot. Like, here's my vocabulary. This is what I want you to recognize. The trouble is, if Amazon hears something that they're pretty sure they know what they heard, but is not on your list, they'll tell you what they heard instead of what's on your list, okay? And a lot of new people come into it, they don't realize that. So they're like, why is it giving me this word? You know, they code their code to only respond to stuff on the list. So what I always say to people is if you're going to use custom slots or any sort of open input, you need to have some sort of fuzzy matching. Okay. Fuzzy matching is where the literal word you get back, you essentially go and compare it to what you were expecting to get or what you wanted to hear, and you come up with a confidence level. For example, in Star Lanes, the pieces you moved around, some of them were attack drones. Okay, it's all drone warfare. Okay, and I found that Alexa was fairly consistently returning attack drums. Okay, which would be great for like a Zulu game, but but it's very close to attack drones. Okay, and that's what really that's the first thing that pushed me to putting fuzzy matching in. But the idea is there's a couple of different algorithms. Some of them have been around literally as long as the phone book, because that's what they were invented for, that essentially help you work out when chords, certain things are phonetically close. Okay, some of them are easy to do, that they're standard libraries for. Caberphone, double metaphone are algorithms that I recommend to people who want to do their own stuff when they're starting. I've moved beyond that. I've got some more advanced stuff. What I've just been messing with lately is basically taking the words and converting them into phonetics. Okay, the International Phonetic Alphabet is a way of phonetically representing usually English words. It's not as good at other languages. So take the word, convert it into this alphabet where, there's no homophones, okay, or they all condense to being the same thing, okay, and then doing the same thing from a vocabulary, and then doing a match with those, okay. And there's another thing called Levenshtein distance, which is normally used to see how far apart text words are from each other. It's really bad for voice because what's written in text is not how it's pronounced, especially in English. So it doesn't work well there. But once you go into phonetics, it is useful. So that was kind of like the most advanced thing, and I'm just rolling that out in 6 swords. I'm pretty pleased with how it's going. I've got some kinks to work through, but I think it's definitely a good strategy to go. And mainly because I don't have a complete vocabulary for converting English words to IPA, because I have Carnegie Mellon published a dictionary, and that's great for the dictionary words. But when you get into, goblins and some of these more esoteric words, they don't know how to put them into IPA. And it is actually very technical. We paid I think $60 to have one guy who really knew IPA convert 2 words for us. Okay. And it's because our eye doctors, the guy who was the people who commissioned us on this project, they had 2 fairly ethnic names. Okay, which we could not, for love or money, make Alexa pronounce correctly. And it's the names of the people, because they had to be right. So this guy, and he did it. It's like I said, I think designers do amazingly wonderful things. This guy had his domain knowledge, and he was able to come up with these squiggly things in IPA that said it the right way.
Wicked. Another thing that you've used in terms of trying to navigate around voice apps is the method of Loki. I'm wondering whether you can just share your thoughts on that, what it is, and how you've applied that to make sense of what could be a fairly complex kind of voice landscape.
No, yeah, that is. I'm pretty pleased with how that turned. It's there's again, I'm not a designer. I try to fake it as best as I can, and there's 1 or 2 things I've come up with. I'm like, wow, I invented something. That's good design. No one else has done this. It turns out I was not the first person to do this, so I'm not gonna. Tailstreamer did it before me, so but I sort of could have. So the problem is this. Okay, there's a couple things voice is not good at. Okay, one of it is data entry. Okay, God forbid trying to type in a URL to speak a URL. It's just forget it. Another one is long lists of things. Okay, if you want a user to pick something out of a list of more than 3 objects, it's hard. But another one is complex settings. Okay, that if you've got a bunch of stuff, you think of your typical dialog box that pops up on the screen. There's some drop downs, there's some check boxes, there's all this sort of stuff, and the user looks at it, picks the ones they want, clicks it in, does it. That's consumable. Okay, trying to do that in voice becomes this huge titanic process of if and thens and else's, and what do we ask for now? And Amazon tried to solve this with their little dialogue model thing they have. And if you want to do a dialogue box exactly like that, and you want to do it in voice, it's not a bad solution they came up with. But I don't think it's the right solution. So I had this problem. Okay, 6 swords is great. The guy who does actually the Magic Door came up with a service called Tailstreamer, where he can render other voices. Okay. On Alexa, you're typically constrained to just speaking in Alexa voice. Okay. On Google, you have the choice of 4 voices, which are not Google's normal voice. Which I actually thought was pretty clever on their part, because there's a very firm distinction between what Google Assistant is saying and what a skill is saying. But you had these 4 choices, and they weren't great, but they were distinct. Whereas there are many more voices in the speech to text to speech world, some of which are quite compelling. Alexa is actually still probably the best, but there are other ones that are nearly as good, and they're different and they're distinct. Okay. Amazon Polly is one of these services. We did some static stuff with Polly and put that into our demotivate skill, and that came out better than the Alexa voice. It could do sarcasm a bit better, so we like that. But he came out with this service that says, oh, okay, I'm going to incorporate all the different voices you get. So you had like 13 different voices, and for each voice, you could change the pitch up or down 2 levels. You could change the speed up or down 2 levels. This is great. This could add a lot of extra color and interest to Six Swords. I'd love to use this service, but I don't know what settings to use. It's like, okay, was this voice better than this voice? And I don't want to just pick one, or do I have to go to each particular place I want to use it and decide what to use there? And then some of them aren't great. There's like this little thing that sounds like an annoying brat. It's just like, I don't think that one. We don't want to use that one. But maybe it sounds better at a lower pitch. I don't know. So what I really wanted to do is to put it in the hands of the users, okay, and let them experiment, and then I just have to go and look at the stats of who did what and what's the most popular. Like, okay, there's a good one like that. But so I had this problem. Okay, you've got 13 voices, you've got 5 pitches, you've got 5 speeds. How do I let people pick this? Okay. And then I remembered this method of loci thing. Okay, this is also called memory palace. Okay, and it's a term. All the top professional memorizers, people who you just like, see them like in talk shows. They go around the audience and each person says something to them. At the end of the show, they go back and they tell them what they said. Okay, the way they do that this Roman thought of. Okay, it's also used by people who do spelling bees and things like that. Is he said, imagine in your mind a memory palace. There's this big palace. It's got rooms, it's got corridors, and what you're going to do is walk through it. It's like I'm going to go down the east wing, and then take a second hallway on the left and the third door on the right. I'm going to put this memory into there. Okay, and you do this to kind of sort out your memories and give them all a place that they're supposed to live. And when you want to remember something, you kind of walk through this and take them back off the shelf. Okay, sounds crazy, but they all use it. They say it works. I have not tried to actually do this, but it's but I remember that. I'm like, okay, well, in Six Swords, we already have a geography, okay? You go around the place. You walk around the wilderness. You walk around towns. So what I did is I created a Bardic College. You walk into the Bardic College. It says, hi, we will train your voice here. So there's a little bit of immersion as well, but that's not essential to the idea. But the idea was you had a place, and it said, oh, to the east, we will train you how to speak at different pitches. To the west, we will train you how to speak at different speeds. And straight ahead to the north, we will train you with different accents. So you go north, and it's like, oh, okay, to the east from there, you can train yourself to speak in different male accents. To the right, you go for different female accents. You go to the right. It also says like, oh, to the north, we have human accents. To the east, we have elven accents. To the south, we have dwarven accents. You go into there. Then you have the choice of, oh, do you want to speak like a northern human? Or, and again, it's all contextualized to that. But what you end up doing is you're ending up picking something out of a list of 13. You're just doing it by walking a geography. Okay, you go back to the start and you can take another passages and make a different choice about other elements of it. Okay, but people find it, what I'm putting out there is that is a lot easier for people to navigate than it is to have a complex dialogue. Okay, well, now I'm asking you this question. Well, now I'm asking you this question. You just have to slog through it, and you're not sure how to skip to the next to get out of this because it's not a dialogue box. They're trying to do a dialogue box, but if you don't know how to tab or how to hit escape or stuff like that, it's a little harder. But if you're in a geography, you know how to get back where you came from. Okay, and again, it's not just this is a very cutesy thing with Six Swords and Voices, but if you imagine having on your app saying, oh, you need help with that? Well, let me send you to customer service. And then you create this geography. It's like, oh, well, there's customer service desk is here. The door to the right is for account information. And, again, really, it's just a menu and you're walking through a menu. But you're casting it as a geography because people can relate to that. Large parts of our brains are wired for navigating through physical spaces. Okay. And by leveraging that, it ups the level of complexity we can do in an audio skill by a lot. Okay. And that's what I consider that is I think is a big potential contribution to this as a platform. It's like, again, I've done big complex stuff. I'm always pushing the boundaries of complexity. Just like, how complex can we make this and still be usable? Okay. Is the user experience still good enough that somebody can do this and it's not a burden to them? And that, I was particularly happy with how that came out.
That's a really good idea, that. And I think that it makes also for a more immersive experience, doesn't it, as well? If you can kind of picture the rooms in your mind, and you kind of, it seems as though that's a really immersive and kind of engaging way to go about solving a pretty complex problem there. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us there, Joe. That was absolutely immense. That was really, really interesting. I think it's refreshing to get a different perspective on things, and to some of the kind of challenges you'd spoke about, and some of the solutions as well to those challenges. Have been really, really interesting discussing with you. Thanks very much. So you're still active on the Slack channels. We'll put links below to the Slack channels for those that aren't involved in there, that want to be involved in there. And if somebody wanted to hit you up with a request for either some consultancy or what have you, where should they go?
Slack is fine. I'm often there. I'm there for work anyway, so I see something pop up that's as easy. There's a Zazazoo website. You can link to that. That's easy. Or just joe@zazazoo.com works too. And I'm happy to chat, and my wife is fond of saying the first hour is free. You have an idea, and I'm very free with my opinion. But again, it's like, thank you very much. I hope that some people can spin some gold out of some of the straw I'm leaving here. The fact that I have not been able to successfully do that, might give you pause, and that's fair enough. I think you need to think that through and decide whether I could be completely on the wrong track here. But again, what I say to people is, you need answers to the questions I ask. Okay, they can be different from mine. Okay, yeah. But when it comes down to making a business, it's like, okay, what are you going to make of value? How are you going to find people that value it, and how are you going to get money from them? That applies. Okay, even if my conclusions you don't agree with, or you think you have better ones than me, that's great. No one would like to be proved wrong more than me. Okay. I would love to be wrong about some of these things, because I'll go, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Let me go do that, because I've invested all this time in it. But we'll see.
Wicked. Thanks very much, Joe. Appreciate that. That was Joe the Oracle Jaquinta. You probably know why I've called him the Oracle now. What that guy doesn't know about Alexa skill development isn't worth knowing. I mean, his experience is absolutely immense. The conversation was madly stimulating. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. If you haven't checked out Six Swords, check it out. It's a really, really immersive skill. Well worth checking it out. If you're not on the Slack channel, I'm going to link to the Slack channel in the show notes, as well as everything else that we've spoke about today. If you're not on the Slack channel, then do get on the Alexa Slack channel. There are some really good discussions going on over there, and Joe is a huge part of that. It seems so as though whatever people ask, he's got an answer for. He's either tried to develop it, or he's built something into his library that solves these problems. It's the discussion over there is immense, and Joe's a huge part of that. So I'll put the link in the show notes. Do check it out. I'll also put the links to Joe's YouTube channel, because there's some really interesting videos on there. We touched on some of it in this episode in terms of the easy way and the hard way to make money on this platform. I'll link also to the VoiceBot podcast that Joe was on last September, so you can check that out as well. And yeah, that was an immense episode. That we did discuss some things that we touched on in previous episodes, but we got into some real detail there based on Joe's experience in terms of some of the challenges involved in this industry. Retention, discoverability being two, monetization being another. So there's been some real food for thought. What I really wanted for this episode, and I think we've actually achieved that pretty well, was a different viewpoint on the industry, because what I don't want to happen is for this podcast to become an entirely kind of groupthink thing where we don't address some of the real challenges that exist in the industry. And I think Joe really did kind of summarize a lot of that and get into detail in a lot of that, and the solutions to some of those challenges as well. So yeah, thank you, Joe, for joining us. Thank you, Dustin, for co-hosting, and thank you all for listening. Now, until next time, see you later.